Afghan withdrawal signals start of new anti-Cabal offensive, by Benjamin Fulford, September 1, 2021. The collapse of U.S. rule in Afghanistan is the start of a major new offensive against the Khazarian mafia, Pentagon sources say. The story being told to the public is that the U.S. military is withdrawing from Afghanistan and the Middle East in order to concentrate on China. However, Pentagon sources say the troops are actually being redeployed to the U.S. and Europe in order to deal with fifth columnists who took over civilian governments in the G7. In other words, the long-awaited 2021 autumn offensive has begun. Take a look at the picture of the jet taking off from Kabul airport below. It has the opposite of 9.11 or 11.09 written on it to make it clear to the world the U.S. neocon policy of invading the Middle East using 911 as an excuse has been reversed. If you look at videos of the plane taking off, you can also notice that no jet exhaust is blowing people over as would happen with a real jet. In other words, the entire airplane departure seems to have been staged to let the world know things have changed. Another sign the events in Afghanistan were not orchestrated by the fake U.S. Joe Biden regime is the fact their so-called defense secretary was forced to order civilian planes to evacuate drug dealers from Kabul airport after the U.S. military refused. This appearance of U.S.-trained and equipped Taliban special forces patrolling Kabul is a sign that the U.S. military is in charge of the Afghan situation. We will talk more about what will happen next, but first, we need to confront the undeniable evidence that the political class in most Western countries has been compromised and no longer represents democracy or the will of the people. The situation in Canada that I have encountered over the summer illustrates the criminal depravity of civilian governments in most G7 countries. Customs at Vancouver Airport no longer says Canadians and foreigners. When I told the customs officer I was not vaccinated and would not get tested and that I would see them in court, she told me I would be unable to board any domestic flights. She suggested that I let them take a cheek swab and just pay for the government-approved quarantine hotel if I wanted a hassle-free vacation. In the end, I forked out $1,500 Canadian for 3 nights in a quarantine hotel. The staff told me their hotel only got $129 out of the $500 per night I was paying. The rest went to all sorts of government-connected middlemen. In other words, Canadian Customs is pushing price gouging by government-connected hotels to finance a newly emerging COVID parasite class. In any case, the quarantine was a joke and I left after 1 night, which I needed to spend in Vancouver anyway, with nobody raising a finger to stop me. Nobody fined me because they knew I would take them to court and ask them to prove COVID-19 exists, something they cannot do. Closer to my BC destination in Vanderhoof, there is what appears to be a quarantine camp. The barbed wire is leaning inward. Despite this, the Canadian government may even have surpassed the government of Israel in the percentage of people who have been jabbed. However, it looks like not all Canadians have been given toxic injections. In other words, we might have a situation like Israel where they injected many citizens with saline solution in order to get people of third world countries to accept dangerous experimental jabs as. Nonetheless, we sent the following letter to the Public Affairs Office of the Canadian Military. Dear Sirs and Madams, this letter is being sent to ask if the Canadian Ministry of Defence has independently confirmed that SARS-CoV-2 exists. We have called Health Canada, the WHO and the CDC and none of them can confirm they have a purified isolate of SARS-CoV-2. The PCR test has been found to be scientifically invalid by multiple courts of law including in Alberta. If the government cannot prove that SARS-CoV-2 exists, then all the VC and lockdowns are crimes according to the Nuremberg Codes. Therefore, if the Canadian military proceeds with enforcing martial law and experimental medical treatments based on fraud, their commanding officers will be charged with war crimes at the International Criminal Court, according to multiple organizations of lawyers. So to repeat my question, has the Canadian military independently confirmed that SARS-CoV-2 exists in an isolated, purified sample? If they have not, is their leadership ready to face a war crimes tribunal? We got no answer from them as this report went live. In any case, the fact Justin Castro refers, in effect, to Hillary Clinton as the leader of the U.S. shows what we already knew, that he is a Khazarian mafia-planted Manchurian candidate. In other words, he knows Biden is fake and reports to Clinton, Rockefeller, as his real boss. Castro has been forced to call an election for September 20, supposedly to take advantage of the popularity of his COVID-19 response. However, our sources say this Rothschild-Rockefeller operative will be removed. The other Rothschild operative soon to disappear is President Emmanuel Macron of France. Macron's US $1 billion stash that was parked in the Cayman Islands has been seized. It seems he is about to be tossed under the bus, is how a Mossad source described the situation. The increasingly drastic crackdown in Australia is another sign of government desperation. The fact that a ceremony invoking Satan was broadcast on prime time in Australia is a clear sign the regime there is losing the plot as well. The increasingly hysterical calls for further COVID-19 crackdowns are actually a sign of weakness. They are failing because they are based on lies. These tweets by former CIA agent "There is no such thing" Brian Dean Wright expresses how the rank and file at the CIA and Pentagon view the situation. There's nearly a universal belief that America and the world are in for one of the most dangerous, unpredictable times in modern history. Afghanistan has shown the world, enemies and allies alike, that our military and intel assets are largely irrelevant because we can't deploy them successfully. The blame lays at the feet of multiple presidents, the generals, the spies and the Congress. The American people are angry, COVID-weary, and divided. If there was ever a time to push American hegemony aside, this is it. The existential problem is that America needs good leadership to right its ship, but there is none. Our federal bench is weak. Biden is corrupt and old. Impeachment is a long shot. VP Harris is an unpopular paperweight. The legislature is a feckless cabal of empty suits. There is fear and outrage streaming through former intel officers over the Afghanistan debacle. America is rudderless, and the world now knows it. What this CIA guy needs to understand is that the political system in Washington, D.C. is broken beyond repair. There is no way any president could make America great again, when it is bankrupt to the tune of over $200 trillion. What we have now is a Rockefeller-Rothschild regime that is funded by the Chinese. The Chinese are giving them money because in return they are being promised control of supposed allies like Japan, Korea, and Australia. From a military point of view, what needs to be done now is straightforward. First of all, civilian governments carrying out war crimes based on lies, i.e., most of the G7, have to be removed. Also, the Rockefeller-Rothschild grip on medical associations and pharmaceutical companies needs to be ended ASAP. From this point of view, the James Bond movie On Her Majesty's Secret Service provides a plan of action. These movies are mostly non-fiction according to MI6, so they provide a blueprint of past intelligence successes. In that movie, Bond kills a Swiss transnational criminal who was blackmailing the world with gene-altering bio-weapons. To kill him, Bond had his Swiss mountain-top laboratory destroyed. What needs to be done now is for the current generation Bond to destroy the complex under the mountains on the borders of Switzerland, Austria, and Liechtenstein. The corporate media needs to be occupied by the white hat military and forced to report the truth. This will mean occupying the high-tech Google, Facebook, Apple complex in Palo Alto, California. It will also mean taking over the CNN AT&T Information Complex in Atlanta, Georgia. The Five Eyes intelligence network, which includes the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, is also waiting for a meeting this autumn between the White Dragon Society and the Asian Dragon family. This will be necessary to set up a system to replace the now hopelessly corrupt Rockefeller-Rothschild system. Until that meeting takes place, expect a further downward spiral in the West. This is necessary to wake up the remaining Kool-Aid drinkers and VC slaves. The system really has failed them and needs to be replaced. For now, though, the military and intelligence agencies of the West will continue with their court-based strategy of asking the powers that be to prove the pandemic is real. They cannot, and that is why their medical martial law gambit is failing. Remember, though, the Satanists have the power to replace a pope with a VC-pushing masked man. This means we need to attack them ruthlessly and at the highest levels until we have complete surrender followed by planetary liberation. As we were about to go live, MI6 had the following to say about the situation in Kabul. We have deployed flares on all entering and exiting military aircraft out of Kabul. This comes on the end of land-to-air missiles using Russian manpads. We do not expect any standing forces or civilian governments to withhold. We see the imminent collapse of the U.S. deep state and CIA.